Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn could be facing a new battle after moderate MPs seized key policy-making positions. The list of MPs who will chair Labour policy committees reads like a who's who of Mr Corbyn's internal critics. They include pro-Trident MP John Woodcock, who reportedly turned the air blue at a Blairite event as he summed up his views on Mr Corbyn's leadership. The annual Parliamentary Party departmental committee elections normally pass without controversy. But this year there appears to have been a concerted effort by Corbyn-sceptic MPs to gain control of one of the party's policy-making mechanisms, according to grassroots website Labour List. Particularly as only 4 of the 17 posts were contested, although that may be because most of Corbyn's Labour allies already have roles as shadow ministers. Self-indulgent comfort zone. Former Shadow Chancellor Chris Leslie, who has said Mr Corbyn's economic policy would result in higher inflation and higher cost of living, which would hit the very people we should be standing up for, will chair the Parliamentary Party's Treasury Committee. Ian Austin, who tweeted, "I'm getting a little tired of the self-indulgent comfort zone fantasy that Corbyn could ever persuade mainstream voters to make him PM," will chair the party's Education Committee. Shabana Mahmood, who quit the shadow cabinet, because she strongly disagreed with Mr Corbyn's economic policies, will chair the Justice Committee. Other Corbyn critics to be appointed to committee chairs include Caroline Flint, Tristram Hunt, Yvonne Lewis, Mike Gapes and Emma Reynolds. They will have the power to stand in for shadow ministers at the dispatch box, although this is rarely used, and influence policy decisions behind the scenes. Mr Corbyn is at odds with many of his centre-left MPs in key policy areas, including the renewal of Trident, the welfare cap and military action in Syria. But he has vowed to open up the party's policy-making process to its members, the vast majority of whom voted for him to be leader. This has sparked fears among moderate MPs that their views will be sidelined. Many MPs feel the agenda of many of Corbyn's backers is less about Jeremy, more about a left realignment of the party, writes an anonymous columnist on Blairite website Progress. This would be achieved with manifestos decided by conferences and executive meetings, with MPs restrained by fear of reselection. Once such changes are achieved, any leader will have to follow.